Alright, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with following this LIBOR, L-I-B-O-R, it's the London Interbank Exchange Rate or some bullshit scandal. It's a quote scandal, which means we've known about it forever. Basically, it's the exchange rate for banks overseas when they exchange, loan each other money. It's the rate of exchange, basically, I guess, between two different banks. And a lot of deals, a lot of financial products, instruments, and deals, they're, I guess, it's various instances. It doesn't matter what kind of interest you get paid and all kinds of bullshit. Bottom line is it affects a whole bunch of paper around the world. And it turns out the exchange rate that the banks would, let's say it was, I don't know, let me just throw out a fake name. Because Barclays borrows from bank. And because the economy's bad and they don't trust that bank, they give them a higher LIBOR rate. Then the government encouraged Barclays to not report the actual number if it was high or negative, to massage it lower. Now, my thinking is, of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Come to find out, it's going to be worldwide. And I've commented on this before. When you have the mindset of a Keynesian, you know, we have this fake financial system. They're going to do things that are fraudulent because, in their eyes, the only thing that matters is not letting them fail. That's the only thing that matters. And that's where it's different between us and them. We call them the elites. I like the word establishment now better. I don't like the word elite. It doesn't mean anything to me. Establishment is better because it's important to note that establishment just means that they're trying to maintain the status quo. Excuse me. And I think that that's more important to understand that it's not any one monolithic view. They all don't agree. They all don't have the same views. Everybody who goes to Bilderberg does not have the same fucking view. We get this monolithic view that everyone who is in the financial system is evil. They're all Rothschilds. They're just a very small portion. And even within the Rothschilds and the Warburg, or the friggin' names, I'm sure there were disagreements there. And they weren't all trying to kill people. It's probably not their ideals. They probably thought they were trying to help people. But anyways, the point here is that when there's a scene in that movie that I actually posted on here a little bit of, on Too Big to Fail, where Hank Paulson is called up after he, quote, let Lehman Brothers fail. See, this is how their mindset is. Everything errs towards more government intervention, more government bailouts. And this is why we hate it so much, because we don't. We're opposite of that. We err towards the side of freedom, liberty, individual success and failure, not collectivized successes and failures, which really you're just collectivizing fail. But Christine Lagarde, was she French finance minister? Fuck, I can't talk. She calls Hank Paulson, and this was maybe the 15th of September. This was after the day Lehman declared bankruptcy. They actually officially declared bankruptcy. And you gotta understand the whole Too Big to Fail movie. It's kind of like an argument between what caused the collapse a little bit. And I thought that they tried to do a fair job, but inevitably it's always going to be a little short. And they kept talking a lot about regulation. Why wasn't this regulated? They keep talking about it. And at one point, Lehman Brothers was on the verge of being bought by, guess who? Barclays. And Barclays did, in fact, agree to buy, put money into Lehman, basically is what it was all about, provided they would get rid of the shit assets on their books. They spun their assets off into a different bank, basically. All this shit. Was it $70 billion worth of real estate that they didn't know how to price it. And so Barclays agreed to do it. And the Treasury, they had all the CEOs there at their little fucking meeting, forcing them, tyrannical nutbags, forcing them to do what they're bidding. And they were all just ecstatic that Barclays was going to do the deal. They were going to buy Lehman, and then B of A was going to buy, forgot it, I can't remember. JP Morgan? I can't remember. My head's exploding. But anyway, so they get all excited, and they're celebrating. And then, of course, during the whole movie, they're talking about how we need more regulation, we need more regulation, we need more regulation. No one wanted to regulate it because we're making too much money. And so they think they have a deal. And the British banking regulator calls and says, we can't approve the deal until about a month to do a full review of it. So they said, even if we agreed with it, even if we were comfortable with it, is the way he said it, which we are not, then it would take us about a month to agree to it. And then the Treasury, all of a sudden, they were just, Geithner was pissed off. You know, Geithner's real arrogant. He thinks he's a fucking king or something. And then Paulson's distraught. And then the next day, Lehman declares bankruptcy. That's the way they present it in the movie, anyways. So the regulator in that situation made it impossible for these regulating whores to sell Lehman to stop their bankruptcy. See, this is what these people do. They trap themselves. They contradict themselves. And when you watch the events unfold, it's fascinating watching them trap themselves in their own bullshit. So the next day, Christine Lagarde, whatever her name is it Lagarde or just Lagarde, something like that, the France finance minister, I guess that's probably like Treasury, she basically calls Hank Paulson up and scolds him because the, quote, credit markets are frozen. And when I say the credit markets are frozen, what we're talking about here is basically because Lehman failed, their assets and their money was frozen by guess who? British banking regulator. And then it caused basically people from Goldman Sachs, customers, JP Morgan, they couldn't get their money. And according to the movie, even General Electric was having a hard time. They couldn't fund their, quote, day-to-day operations. They were calling Hank Paulson. And you got to understand, all these banks and these entities were calling Hank Paulson. And this is how it operates. They were on a day-to-day basis calling Hank, calling Geithner. I don't know about Bernanke, but Bernanke's sort of there, but more in the background. And one of them is Lagarde. She calls, and basically she scolds Hank Paulson for, quote, letting them fail, honk. And basically that's all she says, is that it's having huge, effects in their markets. What were you thinking, letting Lehman fail? It was a huge mistake. And he said, we did everything we could. And that's, again, this is how they think. They got to do everything they can to keep these businesses afloat. And she says, you let it fail, Hank. And effectively ends the call. That's how the way they put it. And this is the reason I'm pointing this out, because I want people to understand that this is our existing financial system. Now, that same woman who said, you let it fail, honk, you look at her and you watch, that sounds exactly like what these people would say. It sounds exactly like what she would say. The idea that it's somehow the United States Treasury responsibility to keep a private investment bank solvent. And it's not. It's not in any way, shape, or form the job of the Treasury. It shouldn't ever be. At least in terms of, the intended style of government we were supposed to have in the United States. But of course, this arrogant bitch, thinks it's our responsibility to prop up this entity. Why? Because it might cause problems overseas. Everything's interconnected financially, and it's almost like they've done it on purpose, interconnected it to where now no one wants it to fail. And this is the mindset. So as in that mindset that nothing can fail, you can't fully regulate the banks because then they might fail. So this is why these same people constantly ask for more regulations, because they know deep down it doesn't matter if they ask for more regulations because no one's going to do it. It sounds good. It makes people feel better. You might get more votes. You might get to keep your job. But they know deep down no one's going to regulate them, because if they did, the banks would completely collapse. And it's furthermore, it's why the government will work to hide the truth about these banks, because if the truth came out, the banks might fail, and then they'd have to take them over in their viewpoint. So why wouldn't they fudge? Why wouldn't they lie? Why wouldn't they commit fraud if it was saving a, quote, too big to fail bank? Anything is possible. They will cheat to any level in order to keep the game going. And it's inevitable it's going to end at some point. It's just a question of when and how and who suffers. I mean, honestly, it looks to me like when you get into, in 2008, what we were on the verge of was the collapse of AIG would have really, that was the event that did not happen. That should have, because the government stepped up basically and put in $85 billion in AIG. If they had collapsed, the entire banking system would have unraveled. All banks that had any exposure to the real estate, you know, the CDOs, the collateral debt, all that crap, the real estate, the derivatives market, they virtually all would have went under. And what would have happened, more important than that, is a general distrust of the banks. Especially, and really what we're talking about largely, there were investment banks, because they did not have a line to the Fed. So they had to come up with their own money. And it just would have deteriorated to where you just would have had boom, 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 bank after bank going down. And it would have been, you know, for a period of a year and a half, 2 years maybe, you probably would have had depressionary results. I mean, I really do believe that. You might have seen 30% unemployment, maybe even higher. I mean, it could have really gotten bad. I really do believe that. I don't think people were bullshitting when they warned you about the effects of it. But I think it was necessary. And it doesn't really matter what I think, it's just reality. Because now we're looking at a situation where it's only going to get worse, because now we're talking about, instead of just banks, we're talking about governments. And so, of course, me, libertarian, over here talking about how worried about the fall of a government. But I'm not an anarchist. At least I don't think I am. You know, but I don't even fully understand anarchy as it's defined probably today. So, but anyways, this is just sort of an update. A lot of stuff going on out there with Obama's birth certificate. I'm not going to get into that. Obama. The guy's a tyrant. We know, probably CIA agent or some bullshit. But what I did want to make note of is just this this bank exchange rate scandal and how it applies to the United States banking, and it's going to come over here probably. But we'll see. Another prediction I do want to throw out there is I don't think Obama's going to debate Romney, but maybe once, because it does not benefit Obama to debate him. Now, maybe he can manufacture some sort of war or crisis in order to get him out of the debates. But I was just thinking about that the other night. I was thinking, if I were President Obama, I would never debate Romney, ever. There's no benefit to debating him. You do not want that record exposed. You do not want to give Romney the platform for the rest of the country to get to know him. Because they all know Obama, but a lot of people don't like Romney because they think he's a rich white folk. He's a rich white Republican bastard. That's how a lot of Democrats view Republicans. So, anyways, that's pretty much it in this long ass video. See ya.